Hello everyone and welcome back to the Tournament of Peace currently being played in Zagreb, Croatia. It is round 7 and it is Hans Moke Niemann versus Ivan Sokolov. Hans continuing his onslaught will try to take the tournament by storm, and his opponent in this game is a very strong Dutch grandmaster. Like I mentioned, Ivan Sokolov, who is not only a top player, he's also a top commentator, but also an incredible coach. In 2016 he coached the team of Iran and also worked very much with Alireza Firuza, and also in 2022 he trained the Uzbekistan team for the Olympiad, where they won first place. So incredible stuff by him, but now he has the black pieces against Hans Niemann. Most unpleasant thing to have to do, but that's why they are there. So let's see what happened in this one. Hans has the white pieces and he opens with e4, and we're gonna have something that is very familiar to, I believe, most of you. Knight to f3, knight to c6, and now bishop to c4, the Giuoco Piano, or the Italian game. Bishop to c5, this is the Giuoco Piano, and now pawn to c3, the so-called main line, although there are other moves you could play in this position. Knight to f6, we have d3, and now d6. We have castles, and now pawn to h6. So very standard stuff, been played many times. Knight b to d2, and now pawn to a5, stopping pawn to b4 by white. Rook to e1, and now we have castles. We often mention that going after the f2 pawn doesn't really do anything. White can simply defend, kick away the knight, and the rook might even be better placed in e2 than on e1 in some lines. So here, just castles. We have knight to f1, knight to e7, and now we have pawn to d4, striking in the center. So again, all been played before, nothing new here. E captures, c captures, and bishop back to b6. And here we have pawn to h3, a move been played only once by Alexander Predke in his game against Daniil Dvirny, and it was played not so long ago in the FIDE Grand Swiss. We have pawn to d5 now, and pawn to e5, offering the trade of bishop for knight here, knight to e4, and now bishop back to d3. And here we have pawn to c5, the first new move of the game. In the game that we mentioned, Alexander Predke versus Daniil Dvirny, knight to f5 was played. But here we have pawn to c5 by Ivan, and it is now, as of move 14, that we have a completely new game. So let's see what happens here. Hans goes knight to g3. He offers Ivan to mess up his pawn structure with knight captures, pawn captures, and only then going something like bishop to f5. But instead, Ivan goes bishop to f5 right away. He doesn't want to capture. So Hans does accept the bishop, knight captures on f5, knight captures, and now bishop captures on e4. We have d captures on e4, rook captures on e4, and now before going after c captures on d4, we have queen to d5, going after the rook here. So rook to g4, putting pressure on that black king. Also bishop captures on h6 could be annoying if the knight remains on f5. So king to h8, unpinning here, and queen to d3, putting pressure on the knight here, and only now does Ivan capture on d4 with knight captures on d4. And here comes a most unpleasant move by Hans, the move from the thumbnail, and that is knight to g5. And it looks like, okay, of course you're not going to capture the knight. If you capture the knight, could be very unpleasant, but that's exactly what Ivan did. The way to play this is in fact the g6. It's a weird move to see. Point is that now after the knight moves, now you will play pawn to h5, attack the rook. After rook g5, you will attack the rook once again, and now you will go after knight to f6, attack the black queen. Here you will see a trade, captures. Okay, the bishop defends the rook, it's not a problem. Queen will move somewhere, doesn't really matter where, and now you'll play queen to e3. And if you don't want to see something like check followed by queen h6, check followed by queen to g7 checkmate, you have to capture on f6, rook will capture on c5, and this is the position that you get. Equal material bishop versus knight. You can play this. However, after this knight to g5 move, Ivan decided that it was okay to capture the knight. He played h captures on g5, and now we have bishop captures on g5, threatening the nasty rook to h4 check, which will result in queen to h7 checkmate. So there's only one good way to treat this. You could play pawn to f5, but it's not really good, so knight to f3 check. It's best to give back the piece and play a slightly worse endgame. And this is what Ivan does. Queen captures on f3. Hans has to accept this as his queen was hanging on d3. Queen captures, g captures, and now comes bishop to d8. If you go bishop to c7, you go after the pawn, so just f4, nothing really happening here. And if f6, e captures, g captures, and now rook to h4 check, king to g8, and now bishop to h6. Rook to f7, for example, and f5, this will be very good for white. But objectively, this is even best for black. Even played bishop to d8, and now Hans went back, bishop to e3, and now he asks, how are you defending your queenside pawns? And okay, we have bishop to e7 defending the pawn. Now king to h1, with the idea of doubling up on the g file, going after the g7 pawn, and the bishop will be shifted over to c3. You can push the pawn later on, open up this diagonal. So this is something that Ivan has to consider very much before doing anything else. So he goes to rook f to e8. He will put pressure on that e5 pawn. We have pawn to f4 and now bishop to f8, adding a defender here, and only now does Hans go pawn to a4. He stops pawn to b5, and now those pawns are disconnected like this are a bit weak. Rook to a6, now shifting the rook over to h6 to put pressure on the h3 pawn, and now bishop to d2. Hans starts his maneuver of going after the g7 pawn. Pawn to c4, clearing this diagonal so the bishop can come to b4 to trade the defender bishop for the attacker bishop. Bishop to c3, and now first rook to h6. Because if you go bishop to b4 right away, it's not very impressive. Rook ag1, you go after the g7 pawn, and once you trade here, let's say captures, and g6, then rook to b1. So now the rook no longer is needed on the g file, but how are you defending everything on the queen side? For example, rook to e7, you defend the pawn here, rook to b5 comes, and okay, you can try something, but it's not going to be great. If you want to stop rook to c5, you have to play something like rook to c7, but then you have this one rook on the queen side controlling both of black's rooks on the queen side, and moves like e6 are coming. It's not going to be easy. Maybe even just h4, h5, you put pressure here, play e6, you have rook h5, very, very unpleasant stuff. So instead, after bishop to c3, Ivan tried rook to h6 first, and now we have king to h2. And okay, situation on the clock is that Hans has some 10 minutes on the clock. Ivan has 36 minutes, but Hans's position is just much, much better. It's that much better that you can even give up the h3 pawn. You don't have to defend it like Hans did. To show you rook ag1, you give up the pawn here, and after king attacks the rook, rook moves, you can capture, for example, on a5. And still it's much better for white. But Hans says, nope, I'm not going to give Ivan any counterplay, just king h2, bishop to b4 now, and Hans just says, all right, rook ag1, we already tested this, pawn to g6, and now rook to d1. The rooks are no longer needed on the g file, but now you will have to worry about moves like rook d5, rook to d7, and so on. So Ivan does trade, bishop captures, b captures, but now Hans just goes rook to... first Ivan goes rook to e7, stops rook to d7, and now Hans goes rook to d5, puts pressure on the a5 pawn, so b6, and now rook to d4. Strongest is actually rook to d6, but it's also unstoppable. Hans can play pretty much whatever as long as he wants, because there is nothing black can do here. Hans first tried rook to d4, maybe just to check how Ivan would defend it. He defended with rook to c7, and then Hans played rook to d6, and he was in this position on move 37 that Ivan Sokolov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. It looks like there could be something that you could do. You're only down one pawn, but no, there's nothing you can do here. Point is that how do you defend the pawn? If you play something like rook to b7, f5 comes, and there's no way to actually play this. Your rook here would be hanging, so you're going to have to defend it with the king, but then f captures on g6, f captures on g6, and now let's say rook captures on c4, and your pawns are simply too weak. Now you're up 2 pawns, and you can do pretty much whatever. Rook will come here, you'll pick up another pawn, so any way you play this, you will still win. As I like to say, even if your uncle was to play this position, he would win with great ease. Hans wins another game, and this puts Hans, believe it or not, on 6.5 out of 7, which is absolutely incredible. And I believe he either broke 2700 again, or he's very close to breaking 2700. He got so many rating points this month that if he didn't fall below 2700 before entering the tournament, he would actually qualify for the candidates via highest rating, maybe not. Okay, but it will be very close. It will be very close if he didn't fall below 2700 before the month of November. But yeah, what are you gonna do? He will have to play consistently in order to achieve something like that. but still incredible stuff. He's playing at a rating performance of 3003 this tournament, which is, which for classical chess is just absolutely remarkable. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see what Hans does in the next 2 games, because I don't think he needs to do anything. He already wins the tournament unless Korobov wins his round today and then 2 more in a row, because Anton Korobov is the only one who can catch up to him. But let me just check how Korobov is doing. Maybe Korobov already finished. Yeah, okay, yeah, Korobov seems to have won his game. Okay, so if Korobov wins the last 2 games, then he could tie with Hans if Hans doesn't perform this admirably, because he's down 2 points. So Hans has to lose 2 and Korobov has to win 2 in order to catch up to Hans, and then I don't know how the tie breaks will be settled. But if that happens, which I find very hard to believe, not that Korobov will win. Korobov could very likely take 2 games, but it's very, very, very hard to say. And Korobov's last 2 opponents are. Sorry, let me just check who his opponents are for. Oh, so sorry. They don't have the pairings yet. Yeah, that's really weird. But I don't think he played Hans. Yeah, he didn't play Hans, so he will still have to play Hans. So it will be very interesting if Korobov will be able to do some damage. Maybe even take a win against Hans. Yeah, will be interesting. We'll see what happens. So yeah, that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Absolutely incredible stuff by Hans. We'll see if he can keep this up. I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Crystal Salem, and I would like to thank David Gasparian, Karin Kawash, Mohamed Soliam, and David Anthony for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Continuing to cover this wonderful tournament, everything else that happens in the chess world, and of course, always checking up on your wonderful suggestions. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.